And then we are going to say, got it. And it's okay. And now you can pause because we don't need the test. For joining us.
Okay. Hello.
Still connecting. Come back.
So, warmly welcome to the colloquium today about Ecovillage education and research. We are actually waiting for some more guests, but you're already there. I want to welcome Amadine and Mariana. Nice to have you there. Also Anna Margarita and Beatrice. It's nice to have you here. And we have wonderful guests. As I already said, three of the most amazing women I know already for a long time. So this is on the one hand Taisa Mattos. She is the education and research coordinator of the Global Ecovillage Network and Gaia Education. And she does a lot of face-to-face programs within GEN International and also a lot of online education programs. And maybe you can introduce yourself, Taisa, a little bit better. If you want, go ahead. She's today not the facilitator like she's usually. So go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just to welcome you all to our 5th ReGEN4all Colloquium. We are happy to bring the topic Ecovillage education and research to our Colloquium series. In ReGEN4all, we like to bring together like community members, practitioners, policymakers and researchers and educators together to discuss some topics that we think that are relevant, and this is one of them. And I can start sharing my own journey with Ecovillage research. It all started in 2004 when I did my first Ecovillage training. It was so impactful that it totally changed my life. And since then, I've been in this enormous Ecovillage adventure, I can say. So I'm a co-founder of a community, an eco-village in Brazil called Terra Una. I spent 10 years with this group and process. Then I left and I joined a few urban communities in Rio. And then something was missing. So I went back to the university and I did my master's studying eco-villages. It came out as a book. I studied Findhorn Ecovillage in Scotland. And then I started my PhD studying ecovillages and the SDGs, how they were already implementing the SDGs on a local level on the ground. I did not complete my PhD. There was some crazy moves here, and I end up pausing it. So I hope to complete it one day. And that was when I started working with GEN. And I've been working as GEN Education and Research Coordinator for the last 4 years. And recently, I joined Gaia Education team as the face-to-face program coordinator. So everything I do is, most of the things I'm doing are related to Ecovillage education. And that's what I'm going to share a little bit with you now.
Thank you, Taisa. Taisa is our first guest, and we have two more great guests. And this is Dr. Rehema White from Scotland and the University of St. Andrews. And Rehema, maybe you can also introduce yourself a little bit and your story, why you're here. And
yes, so it's good to be able to get the chance to do this now, because I was going to point out later that a lot of us have had journeys with ecovillages as well as researchers. So currently I'm an academic with the University of St. Andrews, and I'm also chair of the steering group of Learning for Sustainability Scotland. And my interest in ecovillages probably started when I lived in Africa and I realized how important community was. And so for me, that was a real difference when I came back to, I lived in previously, but the last time I lived in Africa was for 10 years. And when I came back to Scotland, I thought community has to be important here as well. And I started to get involved in community. And I also found Findhorn Ecovillage, which is very influential for lots of people. After I got my position here, I took students up to Findhorn Ecovillage, and I had a number of students who tried to do research project with communities or with Findhorn. I also teach on community nature and governance in relation to sustainability. So I've been in a number of different projects, some of them with some of the people here, which has been great, on research and education and action learning in relation to ecovillages.
great, thank you. Nice to have you here. And then we have Stefanie Raysz from Tempelhof. And Stefanie also has a long history with ecovillages and education. So maybe you can let us know.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here and see you all. Yes, actually, I've been living in an ecovillage south of Germany for 10 years now, and have been working at academia and in the ecovillage, and together with people from projects with the EU, for example, also with the Federal Environmental Agency. And I hold a master's degree in education and economics. And I started a PhD on the philosophy of technology, which I haven't finished so far, but as maybe you, Taisa, I might catch up with this later on again. I was invited tonight as I created a platform in Germany, in German as well, only, that is showcases all the educational courses and workshops that we offer in ecovillages. So, and I introduce you to this platform a bit later. So, yeah. And yeah, together with Anne and Rehema and Taisa, I have lived and worked and loved the Gen community for quite some time. And I think I know education in ecovillages from various sides. I'm a mother of 3. So I know the school thinking in ecovillages quite well. I have been working in projects with Gen International or Gen Germany and Gen Europe for quite some time. Yeah, so we'll dive into that field a bit later. Yeah, that's who I am.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and you all prepared some of your inputs, where you're from and what you're doing actually. And maybe we start now and then we come to a discussion about your topics, and then we see how to move on with that. Okay, Taisa, do you want to start maybe with your presentation?
Sure. So let me share my screen. Can you see it in the, full screen mode?
It's not full screen at the moment.
Okay, because sometimes, let me try again. We have to do it before. Let's see if it works.
That's it.
Great. Thank you. So, Ecovillage education, I decided to start with this wider perspectives, talking about ecovillages, because we never know who is around. You know, most of you here know and already live it in a community, but just to bring the definition we use in GEN, ecovillages are communities using participatory design processes to integrate 4 main areas of sustainability: social, ecology, economy, and culture, or worldview, into a whole systems pathway towards a regenerative future. And I can share that when I started to study ecovillages in the university, what came up to me, because I was already working with ecovillages and ecovillage education and teaching the EDE program, the Ecovillage Design Education Program. And what was kind of caught my attention was that it all came from the tripod of sustainable development, social, environment, and economic. And the ecovillages, the ecovillage approach to education, put together another dimension that we call culture or worldview. And it includes the more subjective aspects of sustainability, also local cultural aspects, traditional wisdom, inner development, and so on. And for me, it was interesting to realize that, for example, in the UN environment, this curriculum, the EDE curriculum that was put together by educators from the Global Ecovillage Network and Gaia Education, it was launched in 2005 and got a bunch of recognitions from the United Nations, UNESCO, UNITAR, and so on. And only in 2012, the UNESCO wrote a document saying that culture was important for sustainability. So I feel ecovillage education is really cutting edge. And as we can see currently, there's a lot of energy around inner development. We see the inner development goals, and like it is part of ecovillage education for at least like almost 20 years. So I think that's a point. And me in my own journey, it was also interesting because while I was living in a community and sharing my knowledge, ecovillages are well known as living laboratories, and they are learning by doing. I was kind of, oh, that's Taisa and her friends, these crazy hippie people. And when I got into the university, it all changed. So I became, oh, she's a social scientist. Oh, these are relevant findings. So just bringing these inspirations to our conversation, because I feel it's relevant and I'm curious to hear from you. So just to show a few images and inputs from ecovillages. So they are living laboratories. We can see like many ecovillages. We can see low impact, low consumption, and high quality lifestyles. And that's something that people can't really understand, because usually you think, oh, you need to consume a lot, or you need to be able to have a high quality lifestyles, and ecovillages can show us just the other way around. Ecovillages are creating community and sustainability not only in rural environment, but also in urban areas. They are revitalizing old villages and old, like, small towns, bringing people again, energizing the places. In these places, it was common that old people are getting old and young people are leaving because they need to study or look for a job. But with an eco-village in a place, these people were attracted to go back. The eco-village approach is also being used in post-disaster recovery. So as we see more and more the impact of climate emergency, people are using, like, rebuilding together, designing, using these principles and patterns. That's the case of Batug Earth Village in the Philippines. There's a lot related on ecosystem restoration. As an example here, we can see Auroville, an eco-village in India with like more than 3,000 people and lots of trees. An entire forest was planted. But we can also see the example from Tamera Ecovillage in Portugal with the water retention landscapes that really change their environment. When we talk about the Ecovillage approach, we are also talking about renewable energy. And in Findhorn, they are well known by the windmills and also solar panels, but it can be very, very low impact and adapted to different realities. That's the case in Senegal. And Senegal is a very interesting place where the movement spread out, transitioning traditional villages into eco-villages. Eco-villages are also regenerating soils, producing their own food. That's the case of the farm, and working with green building and education. Here I'm sharing about Terra Una, the community I'm a co-founder to honor my roots in Brazil. But it's not only about the ecological aspects. So we can also see a lot of many communities, they have their own social currencies. They are working with ethical financial systems, creating community cooperatives, exchange trade systems like gift economy and so on. So there's a lot of innovations and social enterprises on the economic area. There's a lot also happening in the social area. So eco-villages are well known by creating facilitation programs and nonviolent communication, and working to develop our social skills, how to live well together with the others, how to take decisions together, and so on. Here's an example from Zach in Germany. These communities are also caring for people, the environment, and the future generations. Here are some pictures from Piracanga Eco-Village in Brazil, and they have a school for small kids inside the community, but also eco-villages are these places where we work with lifelong education. So there is lots of events and courses and ongoing opportunities to study, and they focus also on young people. So there are programs specific to youth. Here to say that sometimes we say, oh, but I'm not into moving into a community or living in community. That's no problem. You can apply the Ecovillage principles into projects, your personal life, your home, your community, your like village building, as we see here in Brazil, many examples, the transition street or the transition building in partnership with the transition towns movement. So it can be applied to your own reality. And here's an example of schools, school communities in many African countries where the eco-village principles and methods are being applied in schools to bring community together and change their reality. Sorry. Oops. Now. So Ecovillage is a process, not an outcome. And I can add that the example from the ecovillages are recognized as very good, like best practices on climate mitigation. Findhorn community, this image is on the cover of the last IPCC report from 2022. And I could not escape to mention that our education team and partners are going to, we have a session at COP28. It will be online streamed in the new Greening Education Hub. So now the UNESCO is proposing this Greening Education Partnership. If you look at the program, that's all about what ecovillages have been doing for many, many years. So we had to engage. And Jen is proposing a session on regenerative education approaches and tools for teachers, as we see a lot of need to spread this approach, and it will be on December 3rd. So ecovillages are places of inspiration, and I'm very suspicious to share about it because, as you can see, I really love it.
Thank you, Taisa. So you're teaching in your programs, I know you're an EDE, Ecovillage Design Education educator, and you're organizing very often this big workshop for many, many people. So you're teaching about the knowledge of ecovillages, especially in international scale. How would you say, could we even spread the word further about what ecovillages actually have done so far, and how can it inspire even more people? What do you think?
I think there's a lot on language. We need some kind of translations, and it's interesting that many of us here we were engaged in a project, in a GEN project about connecting with local authorities. In GEN, we are now working with schools. How can we bring the ecovillage education into schools, into universities, into other environments? So I feel there's something taking place now. There is kind of expanding the bubble because it's about an approach to education and to relationships, to life itself, and not only like focus on creating new communities. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just a matter of adapting and proposing and trying it out in different contexts.
And I will also open the floor for others. If you have questions, please ask Taisa, Mariana, Helena, Meru, Shoda, Amandine, or also all the others, of course, Rehema and Stefanie. And for me, it would also be interesting, Taisa, if you're going to COP. So who are the people like you teach about the ecovillages then? Like, who's interested in that, and what can we actually bring to that international scale as ecovillager or as the ecovillage world? What would you say?
The Greening Education Hub is something new from this year. So let's see. I don't know what kind of people will be attracted, but that's going to take place in the green zone. That's an open space in COP where people can participate actively. I'm not going in person. I'm currently in Brazil. COP is in Dubai, but some of our partners will attend in person, and I will join them online. So I can share more afterwards.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe to our plenary, what would you say? Have you heard about all the things Taisa has just brought in? Where would you think would it like be a good place to talk about this? What is actually happening in ecovillages worldwide? Do you have an idea? Now everybody is asked. Beatrice, maybe you.
Well, my guess is that those digital influencers should be showing more about how ecovillages can be this place where you can live in abundance of many things that is not money. No? So we can shift this paradigm of having a lot of stuff to be happy and have a fulfilling life. How do you think would be the impact of a soccer player like Neymar being at a house that's green building with permaculture principles, you know, and drinking water that has been through a waste water treatment, through plants, and eating organically? You know, that would make many people aware of this knowledge in a total different way, and in a mainstream channel that's not conventional media. So I think that if we could attract this kind of people, and we have in Brazil, for example, Giselle Bündchen, that would be open to these ideas, I think could be another way of disclosure in what ecovillages have been doing.
This is actually a good idea, inviting famous rich people to ecovillages. Stefanie, what do you think about that?
I think what happens is usually eco-villagers are too busy to take care of it. So they are co-creating their new reality. And yeah, but that's for sure a good idea. And we need eco-village supporters, like the network, to engage.
It can be one intention. Like in Lebensgarten, I remember they said we invite young families, and now the next intention will be we invite famous people. I think that's quite cool. Yeah, does anybody have questions to Taisa's presentation in general or in specific, especially from the people that are not here with pictures yet? Not here with video. Do we have any questions to Taisa? You can also ask them in the chat, or you can switch on your video. Now is the possibility to do that. Yeah, you're also free to ask questions in the chat. Yeah, maybe like what do you think, Stefanie? Do you want to move on about the famous people in Tempelhof?
The famous people, what is famous? But architects, I think I'd like to invite architects more, because I think they influence our life more than we think. They're not just building a building somewhere or designing a site. It is how we see the world and how we live in these buildings. And as I have children, they sometimes think that and we live in quite an old house, they think in squares, how they are shaped. And sometimes I ask them if they can think of any other building that looks a bit more organic. And it's quite difficult for them to understand what a different feeling I could have if I lived closer to nature in a more organic style with different material and a different sound system, views and everything. So architects, I think, we'll need more and different ones in the future, as we have to deal with cities that are there. Half of our world population already lives there, and this needs to be transformed. And before we can do that, we need to be aware of how it shapes our way of thinking. So, yeah, and I'm curious, Taisa, who's the crowd you talk to at the COP, really? Who will listen and why? I'm not so sure about
I think the public is super diverse. I've been to 2 COPs before representing GEN, and in the blue zone, in the official event, it's a lot about governments and ministries and like official representatives. And these conversations are more around how can we try out the Ecovillage approach, do a project together, engage. Usually, like GEN has MOUs signed with many African countries to cooperate in some countries' development, bringing this knowledge. That's the blue zone, and plus a bunch of the official conversations that I did never joined. And in the green zone, it's more open, like diverse participants. And there are like many events taking place at the same time about so many different topics related to climate action, education, sustainability. So you can meet someone from a like-minded organization that can be a partner. We co-organize sessions together, so it's really diverse.
Yeah, thank you. Because my question was also because living a different lifestyle doesn't mean you can see it. It also means a lot of changes inside you. And this is not just a question of language, like the mother tongue language. It is a kind of mindset, and it takes quite some words and situations to describe. And I think this is the basis to do research on how can we change inside in order to understand, to support, to develop a different outside lifestyle. And in COP, there are a lot of words. And how can we touch people, like questioning their lifestyle, questioning what we think is of value, and yeah, the whole feeling things that is not so easy to be described by words. It's more of being a human in these sea of phrases.
Rehema.
So I think that's a really interesting point, Stefanie. But when I went to the COP here in Glasgow, I went in person because it was very close. It's in Scotland. And what I found was that there are lots of words, but there are people behind those words. And so you have these official sessions, but you also have places where people are displaying posters, and you have places where people mingle. And sometimes it's like a taster. You put this out there, and then people who are interested come and they speak to you and they say, what about such and such? And then you need to sign them up for a week experience, or you need to sign them up to something which allows them to get that deeper understanding of what's actually going on. So I think also there are some people who don't necessarily want to live ecovillages, but they'd be very happy to see more ecovillages. They might want more of the post-disaster, or they might want more of this rural development when you have people moving away to cities. So people will have their different reasons for why it's a hook. And then once you've got them on the hook, you can talk about other possibilities. So I think it's absolutely worth going and sort of putting out all these different options. And I used to think that you had to inspire everyone, and now I think if you inspire one person in a talk, that can have massive effects, because that can really cascade.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's the point, right? Like if Taisa is doing this EDE program, I remember there are always people who like create big things, right? If you are talking about what ecovillages actually do and about the different aspects of how to create ecovillages, then you can bring one example. I know you have at least one. How you inspired people by the EDE, Taisa.
There are so many in the EDEs, but one that comes to my mind always is like about the first EDE I was organizing and teaching back in 2009. There was a couple, and they used to work for Coca-Cola. And the EDE is a life-changing experience. So they were learning everything about sustainability, another way of living and doing. And of course, they engaged it because they were not so happy with what they're doing. And during the 4-month program in Brazil, it's like divided in dimensions. So, and they both decided to quit. And they co-created a platform for crowdfunding. There's one of the most successful in Brazil, and they have been working with this since then, supporting new ideas and new projects to emerge. So it's one case.
Mm-hmm.
And we had recently another participant in the online EDE. We gave him a scholarship. He's in a refugee camp. He's from Congo. He's living in a refugee camp in Kenya. And we were like, no. And he was like, he applied, and we said, of course, you can do it for free. Come. And he started to share like about his life and what was, and the group during the EDE, the participants, they co-create a project together. So one group decided that was the project they had to engage with during the course. And now there is a group that continues working to co-create an eco-village in Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. And they already created eco-village songs, and they sing, and they are doing projects with women on conflict management and like planting food, and now another project about reforestation, and it's ongoing. So I think somehow Ecovillage education brings this energy of like, oh, that's it. I need to act, and I need to act now. And you end up full of energy and partners to do something. Can be on a small scale in your home, in your personal life, or bigger, depending on your outreach.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, thank you for this great examples. Yeah, Taisa is very experienced in ecovillage education about ecovillages, and now we're coming to a point like what ecovillage education out of ecovillages actually does. And maybe Stefanie, you can tell a little bit about your experience and about what you actually built up and what you have done in Germany and the last couple of years, and show us a little bit your slides.
Yeah, but before I start this, I'd like to say that I love the idea of ambassadors. And if researchers are enthusiastic about what they're doing, they become ambassadors. And I would encourage everyone to, well, really invite the researchers to dive into not just facts and schemes, but into what it means to be a human in a different way. Mm-hmm. So that there's a sparkling or a little flame coming inside you. Mm-hmm. We have built the first Earthship in Germany, and Earthship is a house with recycling material, and we introduced 70 people from 17 countries of the world to live with us for 7 weeks, and they have built a house together. And this was an experimental learning hub. it was working on site with recycling material, living community, doing research, and on material, on community life and everything. And it was just hilarious. I think these are good occasions to really dive into both getting to know each other and working on something. It's not just observing, but really working on in the field on things. And quite some communities developed out of this. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say before I continue. And
Amadine raised the hand. Maybe you can go. In the meantime, Stefanie.
yeah.
Yes, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good. I'm sorry to have my camera off. Nice to see you all. It's not a question, just a feedback on the points already shared. I recognize a lot of the journey of Taisa with mine, and I have some remarks to say about my experience in terms of building an eco-village and also integrated education. I think we can have two directions. We can in eco-village you can start to create these ED programs or permaculture programs that are more general, and they attract general audience and also inspire to them to replicate that in other places. But in my experience, what he did in the eco-village I was in, we did the opposite. We, instead of course, we did permaculture trainings and transition trainings, but we did it more specifically in concrete on do-it-yourself training. So in 3 or 4 years, we did intense and massive trainings of everything, like from beekeeping to agriculture to regenerative techniques to building to essential oils to crafts. And very easily, in 2 years, we start to create an audience and like an education center. And we build the eco-village in the different areas and sectors very fastly. It was intense and really very, very effective. But of course, not all eco-villages have this direction and objective. But I just want to say that I prove that it's possible. But of course, we need a team to do that, and also to connect with the point Stefanie says before about architecture. I really think that is a very, very good point, because we receive a lot of people studying building construction materials in alternative ways. And even nowadays, I find people that says that they were really inspired by the trainings that they did there in the place, especially building courses like a laboratory of different techniques. And I really think that research on eco-villages should make a partnership with architecture and design universities, because they also do great work. There are alternative people doing like community participatory actions and doing different things in the world of architecture, integrating new materials and new techniques. And I think this is a really good point, and perhaps taking that to the COP will be great. But yeah, it is not a question for Taisa. We already shared a lot of feedback, but it was just a remark and observation of the points shared so far. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Amadine.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Now
Still
we're
a lot to
learning
do.
about Lernorte, learning
Lernorte,
places.
morgen. I'd like to shortly introduce you to a platform that we have developed 4 or 5 years ago. And this educational platform shows you what's going on in the so-called learning places in Germany. And these are mainly GEN, Global Ecovillage Network communities, but not only. And how can I, yeah, there you go. It is a platform that shows what's going on in eco-villages concerning educational programs, workshops, events. And we thought this is a good idea because there was no platform, no real good way to find out how can I, as a non-villager, get in touch with villages, see what they are doing, learn from them, learn with them. And we introduced this platform that shows not just the places where it takes place, the communities, but also all the events that take place there. And also a pool of speakers and experts so that you can search for topics and events at the same time. Yeah, it is at the moment, it contains 48 communities on different topics. We introduced them all. They have their own text, slides, and pictures, so you can have a good idea of who they are. For example, they show community life, what they do with youth, what they do with permaculture design, education, self-sufficiency, regional development, or healing. So it covers all kinds of things, and you have it on one platform. But what is so special about them? We don't let any place on this platform. It needs to be a certain style of village. We want people to, or villages to show up there who walk their talk, for example. It is not just an isolated place where a seminar house is and you go there, take a course and see some slides, talk to some experts, and then leave the place. That is not attached to what it delivers as a content. The places we talk about are places where you find exactly the way of life that they want to follow, that they dream of, and that they encourage you to live like. And so it's only 48 villages so far, but you find people who really live a sustainable life, a holistic life. They agreed on common values in a community. They have an ecological orientation, and they not just talk about lifestyles, they live this lifestyle and experience their, how can I say, their ideas, for example. And they can prove if it works or not. Also, it is a place where people dedicate their lives for the future, so they don't count on gains for the moment. They put it in a whole life circle. They offer a lifestyle that includes children and the elders as well. It's a cross-sectional thinking, and it is a holistic approach because they decide on everything together, and each of the parts of the community is connected to the other. So it is like a bunch of flowers, but this is connected. And this is, for example, a difference to many urban projects. We have a lot of very innovative urban projects, but they are not connected. And in ecovillages, they are thought and lived as one. And this is how we see these communities. What you can find on this platform is not just places. You can see a map and all the names of the places. You can see a calendar. You see the events, and you see the topics that they work on. We have a speakers pool with over 300 speakers and experts. So you have a great variety of searching for things. For example, you want to visit a seminar nearby, you can go to the map and see which community is next to you. You have a gap or a slot for holiday and you want to go on a seminar, you can look in the calendar and so on. So, for example, this is our speakers pool. You see the speakers, and they have their own little page where they can introduce themselves. You can really write to them. They offer an email address, and they offer all their expertise and display what they do, when they do it, and how they do it. So, for example, if you go to one place, you see where it is. You see the experts who are talking there, and you see the topics and the events that take place. What we have also done is we made congresses for 3 years. We invited speakers from all over Germany to speak on certain topics, and we did this as a live congress. So people could follow the congress and could via chat talk to the experts. And we try to cover a wide range of ideas and habits and lifestyle and topics on sustainability and a holistic life. And we recorded it and put it in the media library, so people can see that for free. It was in a project that was called Regio, or Living in Sustainable Villages, that was supported by the Federal Environmental Agency. We were 4 people working on this, and it was very successful actually. So we had about 2,000 people who joined in these 7 days that we did every year. And many people then came, for example, to our ReGEN gatherings, wanting to see these people who were interviewed in these congresses. It was quite a success. It was easy to get in touch with because they offered a telephone number or an email address. They really talked not from a level from above, but they talked about their normal life. So people were asked to ask them questions and get in touch with us. We did also recordings on expert interviews. It was the same style, so we covered a whole range of topics on our lifestyle. You can see also the 5 dimensions of our sustainability approach, and what Taisa also introduced. And we have a library on that as well. So this was a short introduction to this platform. It's available only in German. In Gen Europe, we are trying to establish something like that as well. So yeah, it's a good way good and easy way to access our eco-villages, our knowledge, get in touch with people. Yeah, it's quite a success. So.
Thank you very much, Stefanie. You talked about ambassadors, and here eco-villages are ambassadors themselves. So we learned from you that eco-villages are not only like what is to be taught about, but they are actually teaching about what they are doing, and they are able to do it. And you actually build a platform. So who's using that platform, and how is it used by non-eco-villagers? Maybe you can tell a little bit about it.
I can't say exactly who uses it. It's everyone. It's families, it's singers, it's researchers, it's companies, it's any kind of people show up. And it's not that they show up at one place, they show up at the eco-village that offers these events. So I'm not so really sure, because we haven't made a survey on that, who comes to an eco-village because of our platform, but we know that there are hundreds of people visiting that site. Yeah.
What would you say? Like Rehema is probably a specialist about that, but how could we connect that maybe to other educational institutions like schools or universities? Are there any ideas, or what would you say? How could we use it
Yeah. Well, actually, it would be so easy to use it because it's just a technical interface that you have to use, and you can put in all your programs and events and seminars, and they could be shown there. But what I do not want is that we just put in another educational platform. It is, as I said in the beginning, it is the uniqueness of eco-villages that they combine, for example, personal development and ecological buildings, or experimental housing with a different style of free schools. And if you just offer a seminar, I wouldn't accept it. You know what I mean? At universities, so many interesting seminars, but they're like sectorial based. So people go there and go out, and they have learned something. But in our places, the seminar normally is embedded in community meals, in creating a good environment together through cooking or working in a garden. Yeah, so it's not just I'm theoretically listening to something and then take it home and trying to make a transfer in my head into my normal life. It is a holistic way of experiencing a different mindset. And what I would like at universities is that they send out their students to really feel what they've been taught. So this could be a good interface for that, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So using the teaching places of tomorrow by universities.
Yes, for example.
Maybe, probably Rehema has some remarks on that. I guess.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I know I used to take students to Fintorn Ecovillage, and when we had more budget, we used to go for a week or nearly a week, and they would come back with a totally different understanding. Instead of writing social sustainability, they would have a much better idea of what it actually meant, and through talking to individuals. And we used to get them to do a little work experience where they would go out with one of the departments and actually contribute. They would have a totally different understanding of how ecovillages functioned. So I think that's a very good idea. But it does cost, it has to cost, because the ecovillages have to be recompensed for that. And there's quite a lot of setup that has to happen. So there's a lot of preparation of the students beforehand to prepare them, because for some students it's a really big shock to be in those kinds of contexts. We have to decide, are we going to make it compulsory part of a module, or is it going to be a voluntary extra part? And then we have to decide how much is show and tell and how much is actually just being there in a particular context. So there are some things to think about in the logistics. I wanted to ask, I love the look of your platform. I wanted to ask about quality control, because one of the things that we've had when we've tried to set up a platform that links researchers to people who might want researchers to come in is how much do you actually control that interaction, and how much do you control the quality of the output? Because we know that students have good intentions, but not all students doing an honours project, for example, might be able to give an ecovillage what they think they want.
That's a good question, and it's not so easy to answer. First of all, we know them all. We have visited them, and we talk to them once or twice a year. And we ask for reference notes of their seminar participants. So we ask for about 50 feedback papers a year, approximately. So we have a slight idea what is going on. And we don't accept any seminars. For example, we don't accept things that could put eco-villages in a certain, put them in a certain direction of like sects or very strange eco-villages. We don't offer sex seminars or tantra seminars really. We're very careful with political seminars and religious seminars. And it's not that we don't offer them, it is just, we have been confronted with various, how can I put it? Assaults, or we were put in boxes, and we are trying not to, because this is not the intention. So we try to train the seminar houses how to showcase their platforms and their seminars, also in order to really be attractive to a wide range of people. Yeah. Let's put it that way at the moment. Yeah.
Wow, I'm really surprised. I heard a little bit about it, but I had no idea. And it's a pity that it's only in German so far. I hope like the Ecovillage movement can like spread this idea, because it's super good, really.
And Europe is trying to build something like that, even with the matchmaking.
I think we can easily match that with the platform actually of research and how we are creating it. And I think this was one of the ideas to put that there. And I think we already talked about it. And I think it's like really cool. And as we are some researchers here, we can even like think about how to integrate that better and make it useful for education and further. Yeah. Does anybody else has questions? Maybe to Stefanie about, Bea.
Hi, Stefanie. Thank you for very much inspiring presentation. I would love to have something similar here in Portuguese. And yeah, I can see lots of potential of the university environment. I would like to know if you have come across already with any kind of emulation of what happens in Ecovillage, maybe in student housing.
I'm not so sure if I got it right. You asked me. Can you say the question again? Sorry, I didn't really.
Oh yeah, there are many universities that offer housing for students, right? So maybe, do you think, or have you come across examples of this kind of environment?
Ecovillage for students.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea. No, I haven't come across this.
But let's think about that, like having this college thing for students, or like here in Fechter, they have this terrible buildings, like with one-room apartments and terrible meeting rooms where they can maybe cook or not. And having this in an Ecovillage environment, offering this is a really good idea.
Yeah, because I had a previous experience hosting exchange students in my home city, and when people don't belong to the place but they arrive, they create a community because they share the same struggles. So I could try with them like some composting and recycling, and little this and that, sharing meals. So maybe in a bigger context of the student living in a university, even if they're not exchange students, but most of them maybe are not from the city where the university is based, so that's why they move to those places. So that could help creating a sustainable culture, this undergraduation, right?
I have even, like, the idea could even be creating an Ecovillage university, like having like different ways of teaching, different ways of learning. Rehema, we have to write an application.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that idea of student housing. I mean, I think it's a brilliant idea to look at it in more detail. And I know that there are places now where they're building like these little mini flats of 6 people each, and they have a kitchen that's shared. And when I was a student, my residence was in the style of a Swedish prison, So that meant that we had anti-suicide colors. So we had lime green, purple, dark red, I think it was navy blue, and all the kitchens were yellow and all the bathroom areas were orange, and they mixed the colors randomly. And I think that there is a little bit of understanding of the need for better spaces. The big problem is cost, and the other problem is who actually designs, because many universities are not building them now. It's private companies who are building them, and a university will give a contract to a private constructor, and they're far more interested in cost than in welfare in some cases. The second aspect, I think, that is a really interesting one is that we know when you build sustainable buildings, you don't necessarily get the social interaction that you can acquire in ecovillages, for example, because that is a voluntary engagement and that is an intention to connect with others. And so we know where we've had eco developments, people don't necessarily behave in an eco-village way just because they're living in a place with more renewable energy and so on.
I totally agree, Rehema. Go, Stefanie, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is a very good point. The offerings of new environment not necessarily leads into a new behavior, because also the students, they are not trained. They are not, how can I say, they are not embedded in a new culture yet. So it needs, and they come with trauma. They are so-called victims of the zeitgeist. They have learned habits. They have experienced the art of, state of the art of technology. They have been trained by the mainstream culture. So who questions this holistic lifestyle that is normally not questioned by the society? So if students arrive somewhere and at the university, they come right after school, and school asks them to follow instructions. I sometimes miss an education on mankind before we can ask for technical new ideas or anything. We never have really space for the common ground of values, democracy, freedom, so we teach students again. And so if we just offer them a compost toilet, they might not understand in which cycle that is. Where does my food come from? How do I digest? What can I do with my waste? And what does it do to my local environment? And we don't have to talk about the world in that moment. So maybe we have to rethink of what kind of people we want in the future. Do they have a personality, or are they just persons?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Difficult, yeah.
Yeah, and I see your point, and stepping out of my role as a facilitator, I have an own opinion. I come back to that later. Well, students choose their university, and there are different kinds of university all over Germany, and they choose what they want to study. And there are universities that have a more ecological approach, and there are less. And if you think about, like, it's a future thinking, if you think about an ecoversity, where actually like courses of permaculture and sustainable agriculture and sustainable whatever jurisdiction and sociology of sustainability, I don't know, that we create a university that has actually very innovative, sustainable programs, master programs and bachelor programs designed on eco-village design education on the 4 bases of sustainability. This would be really this would be really innovative and actually attract a lot of people that we actually want to attract and want to teach. And yeah, it's just an idea coming up, and maybe it's like something we can bring like to our universities, Rehema, starting small and making it bigger, or I don't know, or creating something own. Schumacher.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of space
Mm-hmm.
for co-creation in there. And I know, for example, there's a professor in the University of Ghana. I met him in one of the COPs, and he keeps like, please, I want to transform my university into an eco-village something. Can you please support? And it's like, I know the team, but how can we do it like with Ghana? So we brought him to one of the EDEs, but still it doesn't come up like this. There's a lot of work to be done. For sure, I like the idea, Bea, of co-creating this kind of environments, even though I agree with Stefanie. It's way better than the traditional accommodation. And I think there's something in there that it's not so difficult, or let's say it doesn't need so much effort. That would be simply linking local eco-villages with local schools and local universities. Meaning these people that are studying there, like they should visit an eco-village as this living laboratory of sustainability and another way of living. And it's been happening in many countries. How can we energize this so we have more examples? And now we are seeing this beautiful platform from Germany. We should have something like this in every country.
Yeah, and then bring it together on an international scale. What we actually like, this was part of our project, future project. So yeah, great. Bram, do you have any questions? You're smiling.
I don't really have any questions. I was just curious about those topics of education and so on. I'm usually living in Belgium and studying in Belgium at the University of Ghent. I'm studying philosophy. And for the moment, I'm on an Erasmus Plus exchange for 1 semester at the University of Constance in Germany. And I'm also related to Gen Belgium in the way that, we're trying, I'm participating as a council member, building up the national network. So this is a bit of my background. And well, I'm still in my bachelor's, and I'm looking forward to my master and so on. So, but anyway, in all of my paperwork or essay writing, I try to work in the direction of like regenerative cultures, or doing some research about the usual culture in which we get like more and more distant, having more distance from a holistic approach or from nature itself. So yeah, not any specific question, but
yeah, but thank you for your introduction.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks. Okay, after our short trip to an Ecovillage, maybe Rehema, you can tell us a little bit about your approaches actually out of university, teaching about eco culture, eco communities, and so on.
Okay, I'm going to try and just share. Let's just see if this works. Okay, can you see that okay? Yeah, okay. So I am really happy to speak to you about Ecovillage and learning about Ecovillage learning and thinking about how we frame it and how we can collaborate in relation to this. So some of you will be very familiar with this room. It's a room of inspiration and thinking that we sat in, and we did quite a lot in Schloss Tempelhof last time when we were there?
Tondorf.
Schloss
Sorry,
Tempelhof.
Tondorf. That's because you're here, Stefanie. I'm getting confused. So what I would like to talk about a little bit today is just a couple of introduction points, and then to focus on the questions specifically that we're here for the seminar. The first one being, what are the characteristics and contributions of Ecovillage education? I was going to start, first of all, by talking about how are they characterized within ecovillages and how do researchers characterize them. But I've kind of combined this because I don't think you can separate them in a binary. I am then going to talk about the relationship between academic research and critical reflection, and then I'm going to talk about collaboration, and I'm going to be a little bit less optimistic than some of my colleagues here. So let's see what happens when we get there. We started off with our introductions right at the very beginning, talking about our positionalities and explaining that all of us who are speaking today have some kind of personal relationship with community or with ecovillages. So I am an academic at a university. I've worked at this particular university for 17 years, but I've been in the university world for a very long time. But I'm also a member of Transition. I'm also a community volunteer in my local community. I'm also a family member. I'm also part of a neighbor who in our little cluster of houses here. I'm a conservation enthusiast, and I'm a member of a community of practice. I'm a member of a hutting community in a woodland close by. And although at the moment I'm not actively involved in a grant, I still consider myself to be an ecovillage researcher. And I think for most of us, when we come into these positions, we hold these multiple roles, and it's very good to be able to hold these multiple understandings, but what is important is to recognize, who am I at this moment in time? Is it the most important that I'm a mother at the moment looking after my children? And how does that, or is it most important that I'm gathering data, or is it most important that I'm able to teach my students in a particular way? So being explicit with others, polite and respectful about where we are is important. Just before we kicked off, I wanted to talk a little bit about questioning some of this, and actually Taisa did this right at the beginning, that there's a crossover between intentional communities and community development. And sometimes I find people are put off by the word ecovillage because there is this assumption of an ecovillage being a particular type, almost cult. But if I talk about intentional community, some of my colleagues here, they're very open. Oh, that's very interesting. What is happening? How can we deal with it? So there's something about language, but there's also something about overcoming people's assumptions before we deal with them. Who is a researcher? Because I don't believe that a researcher always has to be an academic. A researcher is someone who collects data and who synthesizes and analyzes the data to address a particular question. And we are trained to do that in a rigorous way at a university, but that doesn't mean that someone in a community and in an ecovillage can't be a researcher themselves. And lastly, just to re-emphasize, can you be a researcher and an ecovillage member? Yes, there are many of the researchers who are actually working on ecovillages live in communities or have lived in them, and that's been really apparent with the discussions today. And on the left here, we have somebody who lives in an ecovillage and is a researcher who's present here today, embodying the multiple ways of being in one of our project trips fairly recently. So now I want to talk a little bit about the characteristics and contributions of ecovillage education. And I was actually trying to think about this in different ways. And I think I ended up with 6 different frames or 6 different ways that I want to think about it just now. The first is learning maybe from the ecovillage out, from the inside out. And half the time, I think people don't think of it as learning, hard work learning, because it's something that's happening and it's fun and it's social and it's action and it's doing something and it's making a difference. So sometimes as researchers, we put this label on learning and we can make it quite boring, but good learning is often not boring. However, in ecovillages, we know sometimes it's about explicitly sharing knowledges, and the picture in the middle is us on a trip. Again, I think this is Bintorn, where it was very wet, but we were very carefully learning about things like composting. And on the right-hand side, you can see that there is an attempt within the Ecovillage to educate other people within the Ecovillage and actually to model a laboratory for regenerative living explicitly. This is a very long definition, and this definition was definitely developed by a committee. It's one of the UNESCO definitions, but my framing for some of this and the way that I've explored it through my research has often been through the frame of education for sustainable development. So this definition suggests that it empowers learners to take informed decisions and responsible actions for environmental integrity, blah, 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 whilst respecting cultural diversity. But it also acknowledges it's about lifelong learning and it's quality education. It's holistic and transformational education, which addresses learning content and outcomes pedagogy in the learning environment, and it achieves its potential by transforming society. So education for sustainable development is now formally one of my research fields, and I just want to explore how in ecovillages, I think this can be used, this can be exploited, if you like, to get researchers interested in a slightly different way. So when we talk about education for sustainable development and we talk about this context, we usually talk about formal, non-formal and informal learning. So formal learning is the learning you get in school or you get in university for a program. The non-formal learning, probably you all know this already, the non-formal learning is learning that is around you. It's still usually organized in some way, but it might be through art classes, it might be through for the community, it might be through community projects, it might be learning, the singing that you get. The informal learning is the learning that you get from your social context. And so a lot of that is about the social norms. And if it is modeled, for example, that everybody cycles, then you begin to learn that it's possible to cycle everywhere. But informal learning also is also influenced by the media. And we know that not all influences from the media are really positive about ways for sustainable learning. So individuals are subject to formal, non-formal, and informal learning throughout their lifetime. Obviously, at school and at university, we have those formal sections, but this non-formal. And increasingly, researchers are very interested in the non-formal aspect. We just wrote a report we were contracted to write a report for the Department of Environment in Japan, who was really interested to know what kind of examples are there? How can it work? Do we have any understanding of the impact of this in different kinds of ways? So that is an area where ecovillages can demonstrate how non-formal learning can be important and how it can influence people at different points of the life. The sort of third aspect of this in relation to the ESD model is thinking about scale. And this is something we've said, I think both of you have mentioned, the idea of communities and ecovillages being these living laboratories. But this is something where that all researchers, or most researchers, are really interested in, is the notion of multi-level governance and the notion of how we get connection, how we can scale up some of these things that are happening in ecovillages. So if you see the red circle here, that's the kind of community level. And within that, we have households, and within that, we have individuals. And a lot of sustainability research is at the level of the individual or the level of the region or nation and misses out communities. So we're always trying to sort of say community is that really critical stage in between, and to showcase what that means and how communities can interact with other actors at scale. So, for example, with NGOs, with government, and with business. This diagram can look fairly scary, but if we look down at the bottom left are niche innovations. And what this diagram does is it shows over time, moving across to the right, we hope to scale up sustainability action, you can see on the left-hand side. And we want to shift from these niche innovations towards socio-technical regimes and socio-technical landscapes. And again, much of what happens in communities is really at this niche innovation level. And so understanding what happens within communities and how we can cascade that across networks and between the community and the local authority, or the sort of the next level up in the scale, if you like, is of great interest, not just to people studying ecovillages, but to anybody looking at multi-level governance and sustainability transformation. So that's another thing that can be useful for people. Coming back to this idea of education for sustainable development itself, that is not just about what you teach people. It's generally thought to be about the topics and the pedagogies and the competencies, and this can be in formal and in non-formal context. So the topics can be really diverse. Often we use the SDGs as a way of scoping the kind of range of topics that you can have. Pedagogies are the way that we learn. So in the middle, for example, this is me taking some of my university students out to a local community project. And whenever I do that, I try to say to the people that we're visiting, we want to pay back. So if you spend 3 hours showing us around your project, I'm coming with 20 students. We will give you half an hour of labor to do something which is really boring for one person, but with 20 students, we can do a lot. So here we're planting some trees for them on a very cold and wet day. And on the right-hand side, you see an example of system thinking. And with education for sustainable development, the idea is it's not just what you learn, it's not just how you learn, but it's the development of these suites of knowledge, capacity, and skills that together make up competencies. And education for sustainable development, there's now this suite of generic competencies that there's been a lot of discussion over what do people need to be able to think ahead and to imagine and then create and support sustainable futures. And some of those are ways of thinking, systems thinking, future thinking, critical thinking. Some of those are ways of doing, so strategic and collaboration and problem solving competencies. Integrated problem solving also means holistic problem solving. And some are about ways of being, and that's the inner development that you were talking about earlier, self-awareness and an appreciation of normative and cultural contexts. And there's been increasingly focus on what these are and how we can support these, and realizing that classroom learning is often limited in how we can support some of these. So we can set assessments on reflective assessments, which can support self-awareness. We can get students to work together in little groups to enhance collaboration. But by taking students outside of the classroom into eco-village or community sort of context to work together with others, we can really push forward innovative pedagogies to support competencies. My fifth way of framing this goes back to Patrick Geddes. So Patrick Geddes was actually born and brought up in Scotland, although he went and worked in India for quite a while. And he came up with many of the ways of thinking which now underpin sustainability action and the kind of shift into regenerative processes, regenerative gatherings. Some of those were, although he didn't probably use the exact words, was the act local, think global, for example. He has another one where he talks about sort of landscapes and people having different roles with different landscape levels, but he also talks about learning and the importance of heart, hands, and head in that particular order. That often at universities we focus on the head learning, and the head here is Paulo Freire, it's not Patrick Geddes, who is a really important thinker for us. And his thinking has been really influential in what we do, but it's also really important that we learn by using our hands. And that's what you've all been saying, is that the learning that we can appreciate within eco-villages or working together with people in eco-villages is really critical, and that we learn with the heart. And that's what's much more difficult to actually say to people and to engage people in different ways. Yeah. Paulo Freire is recognized. My current research is actually more on this last framing, and that is characteristics and contributions of eco-village education, going beyond. So the competencies, again, for UNESCO, I find them a really useful way of thinking, but I also find them a little bit box-like. and that's a useful way to start to introduce people to them. But for me, supporting regenerative communities really comes from the heart a lot. And it comes from my connection with nature, and it comes from the way that I relate to other people who share some of those values and views. And so we've just argued that we think there should be another competency, which is in relation to nature, and which relates to nature connectedness, but connectedness which is not just about people being within nature, so being able to appreciate indigenous ontologies of being a part of, rather than the Western dualism with nature, but also relational paradigms, thinking about relational ways of thinking about ontologies, or ways of knowing, ways of thinking, the epistemologies, and relational ways of acting, like ethics. And there's a lovely paper that came out fairly recently, Walsh et al. 2021, that I can put in the chat later if you like, which talks about how in sustainable development we've been more focused on the technological solution, technocratic solution focused ways of acting, rather than these relational ways of acting, and trying to bring these back into some of the debates. And I've just started working with a colleague who has been looking at material assemblages and new materialism, including human and the more than human actors, and trying to see how these different entities together can create a space and can co-create some kind of future way of being there. So those are my different frames on characterizing education in ecovillages, mostly from a researcher perspective. And I think that that's what's not all researchers know what ecovillages have. And so sometimes there is a need to perhaps put out some of those hooks to researchers using some of this language or terminology or possibilities of ways in which they can be framed. So the next question was, how can academic research enhance active learning and reflection? And I think the ideal thing is the co-production of knowledge, where ecovillagers themselves become researchers, and they are not just subjects who are passively engaged in research, but that they can actually co-produce the questions that need to be addressed. They can co-produce a methodology, and then they can be active researchers at some level within that kind of process, and co-own the outputs, have outputs which are relevant to different people. And there's a big literature now on co-production of knowledge and on the challenges that exist within it, particularly when there are power asymmetries, or there are resource constraints, or there are particular constraints to the project. But certainly, even if there isn't full co-production, I think researchers can listen to ecovillage questions to help set the agenda. And it's useful to come in with external questions, but also to hear what needs to be done. These are sort of, the top is my priority, if you like. At least they need to enable and support active participation in research. Researchers have to produce appropriate outputs. And we talked earlier in this webinar about how do we get all this wonderful information about ecovillages out to people? And some of that is about targeting your audience and producing very specific outputs for very specific audiences. Policy briefs need to be produced for policymakers, but then they need to be walked into somebody's office and actually really taken in, presented in a seminar. There needs to be some way of getting it to people's attention beyond just producing it. Increasingly, we're starting to produce film, and we're trying to get students to be involved in producing film that's really useful in that kind of way. And I also think that it's very useful if research can feed back in an active way some of the results to communities, so that communities can learn from the analysis and the synthesis that the researcher can contribute. So it may not be a full co-production, but it's a discussion of what does this mean for you and what can this mean? And finally, and I think this is not insignificant, is that I think academic research can legitimize ecovillage processes. And so there's been some debate here about how people don't take ecovillages seriously. They still think there's a bunch of hippies. And I think the more academic papers that come out in top quality journals that really articulate and critically interrogate in a very honest way some of these processes, the more that we can see that academic research can support some of the learning processes and reflections there. And my final question, how can academics and ecovillages collaborate? And I've written better because I think there is some collaboration, of course, that's going on. And I started off with a short list and it kept getting longer, so I'm sorry for all the text. I think the first is the ethics of care. So, and this is partly setting up the different system that universities are. And here I'm talking about academics and universities and research systems. We are under a huge amount of pressure to produce papers, to get funds, to cycle through PhD students, and to teach a certain number of courses in a certain way. There's been a commodification of the education system. There's been a marketization of universities, and the whole sector has shifted into this much more outputs and less time or less. There is interest in quality, but there's a certain level of quality control. So universities sit awkwardly in between a community, and which is very loosely coupled, and private sector, which is very tightly coupled. And so there are lots of tensions for researchers, and I think it's really important that that is understood. When a researcher comes in, they have all, even if they themselves don't want to see that, they have all this pressure behind them. So for a researcher to take ethics of care, there needs sometimes to actually be an explicit contract about what is the relationship going to be and who's going to bring what. It's really important that both sides make positionality explicit and actually sometimes state what the expectations are. So I think there's quite a lot to do at the beginning. I don't think all research is necessarily good for ecovillages. I think we need to be really careful about it. We wrote a paper a little while recently where we were talking explicitly about PhD students going into difficult contexts and saying that it can be very difficult for PhD students to develop relationships unless they have pre-existing relationships in time for the PhD project. And so sometimes we need to think about either having PhD supervisors who have those relationships or supporting students who already have some existing knowledge in this kind of area. I would hope that many ecovillages, if they're going to engage with many researchers, have protocols for research engagement and some way of kind of gatekeeping who's going to come in and what are they going to ask, so that the same 4 people in a village don't get interviewed by 5 different honours students every single year. I know Fintorn developed that, and I really think it was a good thing. We've presented ecovillages tonight in a really positive way, but whenever you have a situation which is a community which is inclusive, they are also sometimes exclusive, and there are issues that arise, there are conflicts that arise, there are challenges that arise within ecovillages. That's just a part of life, and it can be very difficult as a researcher to think about how do I represent this, because I need to be authentic and retain my academic merit to be able to do this, but also wanting to do it with care that is not damaging to the ecovillage and to the wider kind of movement, if you like. Having a platform for engagement, we've talked about that, can be great, but we have some issues around there. And then there's also this language and framing. So sometimes a community wants to know, how do we compost better? I want a researcher in to tell me how to compost better because we have this problem with the grass clippings and we just can't get rid of them. They're too hot. And please, can someone come in and tell me this? But the researcher who comes in may have to frame that more widely and may be far more interested in writing about the circular economy or the microbiomes or composting, blah, 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 blah. And so sometimes there needs to be some kind of arrangement about that. And then finally, we have these very different knowledge systems. And people don't always know that or accept that and what that actually means and the kind of discussions that you need, the dialogical processes. So finally, then, I absolutely think that the kind of learning that happens in Ecovillage is absolutely invaluable for regenerative futures. There's so much that is going on. And I thought Taisa beautifully represented that at the very beginning here. There is a lot of interest from academics, but sometimes they don't quite know how to get in. And I think there should be some really careful gatekeeping. So there needs to be care around the framing required to research more widely theoretical as well as immediate practical issues. There's huge potential for collaboration, but be careful about the logistical, the ethical, the relational challenges. But I do think that such collaboration can be really fruitful for everyone. And I think it can generate new forms of knowledge, which really can help us take these niches of innovation and start to support the sustainability transformation we all want. That's me.
Thank you for that.
Wow,
For that
amazing.
charismatic presentation. That is really valuable, especially in the context of this project, actually, of this ReGEN4all project we are in, and we actually want to bring together researcher, educator, politicians, having an outreach of this, actually what we're doing, what is happening here. And I think this links basically everything we want to achieve within that project and where we want to get to. And it also leads to the questions of how to move on with that. There is knowledge like how to bring the knowledge within ecovillages together and educate out of the ecovillage. There is knowledge about how to bring the knowledge from universities, also like combine it with actually the ecovillage world and make it even more fruitful. And there's this big international education system that we have already established in the ecovillage world. So maybe the final question we can think about and talk about here is how to bring that together and make it fruitful in a way we can actually like support not only us but also the world and many more people and make it more visible. What would you think? Maybe like one after another. We have like 15 minutes left. You have 5 minutes each. What would you think? How can we move on with all that? I thought, do you want to start?
I'm still reflecting on Rehema's presentation. I think it was really like inspiring the way I really like the way you present and put knowledge together. That's like so clear, so precise, and so knowledgeable. And yeah, really a gift to be here in this circle. Yeah, maybe I'll pass it over to you, Bay. I saw your hands up and I can come up with questions afterwards.
Well, thank you, Rehema. Your presentation was incredible. Made my brain like this. I'm certainly going to watch everyone again. But I was thinking about one of the challenges that could be faced in this relationship from not only universities but also schools to the eco-villages is that you said in a certain point that, oh, it's a challenge for the PhD researcher to build this relationship, but also for the current researchers who are already PhDs, how many of them are aware of eco-villages? So in Brazil, we have this mandatory law now that put some hours of university extension projects. So there are discipline courses within the bachelor courses that should be taken out of the university to the communities. So outreach the research and make this exchange working with college students, but how this can be done if the relationship is not pre-established. So maybe the crucial part, the crucial role of these networks and platforms such as the one Stefanie showed us would be to start these relationships. How do you think about it? I would like to hear all of you.
Yeah, I think if I can start on that, I think absolutely. So I call them gatekeepers, but I see Stefanie's called them translators and ambassadors. And I think, yeah, whatever you want to call them, ambassadors is a fantastic word. Although again, so when our honor students are choosing research projects, what I have done is I've got transition to come up with topics that they need information on. And then when I'm showing the honor students, I can say, look, if you want to do a project that really has a practical difference, here are some projects here that you can work on. Some of my colleague researchers have advised those honor students not to do those projects because they're really boring, they're just really practical, and they can't get into any kind of theory. And so there has to be a way of kind of allowing and being able to articulate different ways in which these possible projects can be framed more widely. So I think there's something there about translating from the Ecovillage side out, and also about allowing in critical and engagement. So it sounds to me like there are multiple things. So there's how do you capture and publish and test and evidence in an academic way existing practices? That's almost sort of one set of questions. So the people at Fintorn, they're the best composters I know. I'm sure other eco-villages have master composters. And the person who's in charge of compost, she does mindful composting, and she is just embodied and embedded in that task, and she is amazing. So that, but and some of obviously a lot of her knowledge is learned by doing, and it's quite hard to capture and write down and to codify some of that to be able to publish it. But I think there is the possibility to be able to develop practical or to be able to publish some of the practical lessons that are being learned, provided they give the authority and they are co-published together with the people who have that particular knowledge in the first place. So this is when you get to the co-production of knowledge. So I think stuff that is happening that is really good, buildings, waste, water, energy, and some of the social aspects are really interesting to publish already. Where I think it gets more interesting is where people are learning, and that learning is changing in eco-villages, and you want researchers to come in and not just evidence what you're doing, but to be able to analyze and support, and to be able together to decide on new directions. And that's where I think it's really interesting. And also sometimes there are things happening in eco-villages that you may not know are of interest to researchers. And a researcher may be saying, oh, I really want to know about multi-level perspectives, MLP. And if you came to an eco-village and said, I want to do something on MLP, they would say, what is this? We don't do this. It's nothing to do with us. But it's really a phenomenal space to do that. And I think eco-villages can learn a lot from those kinds of discussions. So that's maybe a third kind of category of research where eco-villages are doing things but don't realize how critical it can be. And sometimes nobody realizes how critical it can be to wider research sort of concepts and directions.
Great. Yes, thank you.
I keep adding topics to my list, and I feel this conversation and this session is so rich that I'm like, on the one hand, oh, I'm really sorry that there are not so many people around to be part of it. But on the other hand, it feels like so cozy that we are here and we can ask several questions and interact, because I can visualize a bunch of possible projects and next steps. And yeah, I can see convergences.
Well, we sit together and write Rehema next week.
It just came to my mind, maybe it's not so difficult to bring students out into the world. If we change the place of education just once a week, if we did a bicycle excursion and teach them on philosophy at the same time, give them the opportunity to dig into the soil and ask for new ideas in for example, helping farmers in Africa. I think it would make a change if we just developed different settings for the same input. I think this would even help to, as you said, Rehema, combine heart and soul, so to speak. So let us go out of these buildings where we sit in front, or there's a teacher in front, and get more of these touch points in all kinds of fields, and establish a buddy system that you can rely on throughout your study time as a student. For example, why don't you have a person who you connect to at a different place, and you write letters to each other once every 3 months or so, and visit each other once in half a year, and stuff like that. So I think it is also leaving the conventional places and the comfort zones. I think this makes a difference already.
I fully agree that field trips are really, really important for students, but logistically they're very difficult to do frequently, because our students, for example, even in a master's program, they're taking classes across different departments. They have a timetable where they're not all available at the same time. There's a cost to getting them all somewhere. There's creating space in the curriculum in a particular kind of way. So depending on the program, depending on how close the eco-village or the context is, there are possibilities for some universities, for some programs, but maybe not for all. But can I suggest that, because that can be difficult, take the eco-village to the university? And so we have transition groups at universities, and they are fantastic. So my university has an amazing group of people, but there could be real inspiration and real enthusiasm, real lessons coming from eco-villages. And so the transition group that we have, they support people to cycle. We run a bike pool where we fix bikes. We run a teaching students how to ride bikes in the UK program. We have bike breakfasts. We set up and run community gardens. We try and support students in digs to reduce their energy use. We educate people about vegan cooking and vegetarian cooking, all these different things. But there are many aspects which eco-villagers are highly skilled at, to be able to come in and inspire some of those transition groups, or educate them to do these things better. So not just get the university into the eco-village, get the eco-village into the university.
And maybe both ways. So
Can I
them
ask
there, creating
another question?
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, go ahead.
It's because when Stefanie said about the changing the setting, and then Rehema like read my mind, say we could do the other way around, bring the ecovillages inside university. But how do you think this online learning can help do that? Because we've been through like in Brazil 3 years of online education in an emergency way. Everyone now wants to be in person, but it's opened many minds to the fact that we don't need to be physically together to exchange. So maybe, I don't know if in your institutions, if classes have gone hybrid, but do you think that could be an opening start for places that, for example, don't have the financial resources or the logistics to make the food?
It's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant idea to have guest speakers from eco-villages, because so many places are not doing hybrid anymore. They're doing in person, but you can still have guest speakers who come in, and we all have the big screens, so you can set them up so that you can have a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting and bring someone in.
I can say that I do it a lot. Like last month, I held a session for a university in Portugal about eco-villages. And now next month, I have another session. And in Brazil, I do it in person in Rio and São Paulo. I hold some ecovillage related programs like immersive in ecovillages or just one session here and there. And usually people like it. And I feel that's the kind of ingredient that makes students like, oh, now I'm gonna visit the ecovillage nearby now that I really like connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it can be both ways. It can be like ecovillage visit and then creating project at the own university. So what can we do here? And maybe also, like I was teaching today gender and diversity, and the first thing I did, like breaking off the order of the room, like I'm in the front and all the others are sitting like this, like creating other learning facilities, learning rooms. This can also be something that already changes, teaching in circles, and I don't know, taking the ideas out of the ecovillages and the way of communication that we are doing, like being more equal, not like here's the professor and there's the students, but being like in one group and learning from each other and learning with each other. This is actually what we can learn as teachers from ecovillages, like being on one level, and also bring like like you said, Rehema, the heart and the hands with, like not only thinking and having presentations, but letting them think their own, letting them feel it. Like, what is your, like, getting deeper into what is it doing to you? How are you feeling about it? And so on. Stefanie, I see you want to say something.
And now we are touching a really interesting point. What is a modern university?
Mm-hmm.
When we come towards this, as we talk about schools at the moment, what is a modern school? We have a free school here, and you lack of normal ways of teacher teaching kids. We don't have this anymore, really. So on the other hand, is an eco-village really, eco-villages are normally not an easy lifestyle that a lot of people can adopt to. They're remote. It's a small number of people gathering together with hard limits to let other people in and so on. Sometimes I think we have to discover eco-villages in a modern way. For example, in Gen Europe, I really want to open up our borders who can be a member, because I think we have a lot of new ideas in urban areas, and we are not really aware of how we can combine them. So maybe it is the eco-village that can help detect these things and have an idea how to connect them, but not in an eco-village, like a traditional eco-village way, but in a modern urban way. And I sometimes think that eco-villages are not so modern in a way of innovation, in the space of innovation. I think there are more innovations in urban cities at the moment. The only thing is that in urban cities, people don't combine them and connect them and feel connected within the members. And I think universities can gather this at one place because they have young people, they have curious people, and they have time, and they have the capacity to dig into this. So yeah, this is just my thought on the future of universities and the role of eco-villages towards innovation.
Wow, so much food for thought. I have like a bunch of ideas. I know we are at the time. Such a rich session. Wow. We need to continue this conversation and transform it in the next.
We're gonna have a meeting next week.
I now want to co-create our next projects together.
About the University of the
So much.
Future, the Ecovillage. Yeah,
Great.
that's really good and really, really important. And maybe each of you can say a last word about what you're taking with you, and maybe also what you want to give. Well, you already gave a lot, but maybe out of what has grown in this conversation in you. Who wants to start? Stefanie, Taisa, Rehema?
I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for all of you, this fantastic session, especially Stefanie and Rehema for like our partnership, and for the two of you like having accepted our invitation to be here, and like, yeah, I'm very inspired for us to co-create together. And I can say I'm also grateful, Gaia, that you came to support, and thank you all. Annie for facilitating. It's just lots of gratitude, and yeah, I'm very, like, I wrote many pages that I will review, and I want to continue this conversation. Thank you.
I'm very grateful too. I really enjoyed all the new ideas and your experience and your stories, and I'd love to have this more often, actually, because then we get in touch with the practical side and the university side, and we are not so far away, actually. It's just we are in roles that we have. At university, you have to deliver things. Ecovillages, we do practical things others want to know, so yeah, in roles. But yeah, I really enjoyed today. Thank you for offering this space and space. And now I'd like to go to university and help and support.
Yay! Thanks.
Yeah, I feel really inspired. I've been, in my head has been in another place and not quite in Ecovillages for the last few months. And it's very nice to look in there again and to say, oh, all that richness, we need to do something. And I love the idea of not just researchers coming into the Ecovillage to do projects and take out knowledge, but having something that's much more around co-production. And I love the idea of eco-villagers taking over and transforming the higher education sector. That's my next mission.
Let's do that. Yeah, it's actually my first Gen research colloquium in my university. I'm really in this institute now, so this is also creating a new energy here, having you all here and having all these thoughts here. And yeah, we are actually, like, I can spoil a little bit, Taisa and me, we are writing at an application that we want to, like, create really bigger things, and we are actually gathering ideas what has to come in, and want to collaborate with of course with St. Andrews and many ecovillages, and think about where to create that institute of research and education of ecovillages. And there are some bigger ideas around, and we have to, like, bring it down to the earth now somehow and create it step by step together. And I'm looking very much forward to this. And I really was looking forward to that session, because I thought we are going to explore and create new ideas, and I knew that we will discuss about it, and it was exactly like I thought. So thank you all of being here and thinking and bringing all your knowledge in. Yeah.
And as we are in such small group, maybe Beatriz, Bren, and Amandine, if you feel like, you can just open your mic and share. How was that for you?
Yeah, I would like to ask that I'm very I would like to tell you that I'm very happy to see what is going on with all of your lives, creating these projects, working on research topics in the university itself, and yeah, I think I just would like to promise you that there is also a next generation of, for me, just like living into me, and hopefully some others as well who would like to. Well, I can speak for myself at least, that I could promise that I would like to go on with this this regenerative culture, this eco-village movement, doing research and combining it in university, because I really think this is important to widen up and to make this more or like, yeah, in a way showing that this is this could be, or this is like something renewing, regenerative. So I would just like to thank you all for this, and I'd like to see you again at some point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know if Amandine wants to speak, but I'm glad
Go
I
ahead.
can see her
Amandine,
again, as well,
okay.
Taisa and Anne, and also to meet you, Bran, Rehema, and Stefanie. So nice to be among such great minds. And I would like to highlight the female gender role in the sustainability transition. So great to be inspired by women. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your knowledge, and giving me and everyone the opportunity to engage, taking your time to answer our questions. Thank you so much. It was lovely evening.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Amandine,
Amandine. See
Amandine.
you open your.
Yes, from the sides, yeah, you already say almost all the important, but yes, it was great, very inspiring. It really touches some existential questions on myself, also regarding these multiple roles. But I really get inspired to even to return to an eco village or to teach, and but also I see positive things in these conversations regarding um, ReGEN4all conversations on this ecoversity, and many ideas here that I really see that it was good. It was good to give some energy and inspiring directions. Yes, thank you all. Really, yeah.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you
after-
so much for
you
joining
soon.
us, for being here.
Thank you.
Bye bye.